Hi folks, and welcome back. It's been weeks since I came back from Norway and Sweden on my big canoe trip with Andy. I hope you've been enjoying the series of videos. I had loads and loads of questions in the comments about kit that I'd taken, you know, what worked, what didn't, what I would change, you know, if I did the trip again, and you know, just questions about how the trip went, really, what I felt about it, you know, how I felt about how tough it was, because it was a tough trip, that's for sure. So I thought I'd do a bit of a kit video, what I took with me, you know, what I would change, you know, if I did this trip again, and yeah, just kind of run through my thoughts on our big canoe trip in Scandinavia. Before I get started with the video, I just want to mention very briefly about competitions. If I run any sort of competition or giveaway, it will always be in the video. It will be me, my face, explaining the competition, and that's the way I do things. If you've received any sort of comments or reply to your comment or an email or message, apparently from me, saying that you've won some sort of competition or prize, please ignore it. It's scam. It's not from me. There seems to be an awful lot of this going around at the moment across all sorts of channels. YouTube really need to pull their finger out and sort it out, because it's affecting lots of people. I'm trying to you know, delete users as they send this sort of stuff out, but you know, as soon as you delete one account, there's another one, and it's all the same sort of thing. It's all asking you to subscribe to something called, what is it called? Telegram, I think, something like that. I've never even heard of it. I certainly don't have a Telegram account, so if you get anything through, apparently from me, it might even have my picture on it. It isn't me. I don't work that way. So please, yeah, don't you know, get yourself in a muddle over it. Just ignore it, report it, delete it, whatever. It's certainly not from me. This is the gear that I took with me on that big canoe trip. It was a 7-day canoe trip. We needed to take quite a bit of gear with us, all of our food, all the rest of it. And obviously because we were filming, we had a lot of filming gear that we had to take as well. So it looks like a lot, and it is a lot. And believe me, I had to carry this stuff several times over portages, you know. Yeah, it was heavy, it was cumbersome, and it would have been fantastic to have gone much lighter. But this is the way we did it on this trip. Some of these things I took with me from the UK. Some things we borrowed. A lot of the gear was supplied by our host Peter, and you know, we couldn't have done the trip without him, that's for sure. You know, he supplied gear. He obviously transported us to the start, picked us up from the end, got various you know, bits of shopping ahead of time that we needed. All the rest of it, he was an absolute superstar. So yeah, I'm just going to go through first of all the kit that I took with me, and then I'll talk about the kit that Peter supplied. First up, I've got my paddling clothes. So these are the clothes I wore every day while out in the canoe, and then I could get changed out of these if I got wet in the evening and put on, you know, more comfortable clothes. So on my head, I had my Tilly hat. I love this hat. It's really comfortable. It keeps the sun out of my eyes. It's warm, it's windproof, it floats if it falls in the water, and it's just perfect for canoeing. I wear it all the time, complete with sweat stains from all of those long, arduous portages, which I've almost forgotten about. So that's the hemp version of the good old Canadian Tilly hat. On my feet, I wore dry socks. These are by Sealskins, and they're the longer kind of like calf length ones. So, you know, my feet are dry up to here. Often my feet were a lot deeper in the water than that, sadly, so the water did get in. But, you know, in shallower water, they're great and they're comfortable. And then over those, I had a pair of neoprene boots. These are by Palm, and they're very comfortable. Just while you're paddling, or if you need to, you know, get out just to get yourself across the shallows or whatever, short little portages, they're okay. But if I was going to do a trip like this again, I would definitely reconsider what I took as footwear for walking. I ended up damaging both of my feet on this trip, and it took about 3 weeks for them to recover. I had some tendonitis which ran from the bottom of my foot all the way up the side, very painful, and that was purely because I was walking in these. I was carrying heavy weights, walking over uneven ground, and you know, as you can see, they just flex. They just flex all over the place. They're not designed for long walks and carrying weight. There's just not enough cushioning, there's not enough support in the ankle, there's not enough support in the foot, and your foot just bends and flexes over all those rocks and boulders, which is exactly what Norway was like. It was just a boulder field. So all those portages were just, you know, every one was just doing damage to my feet. On my bottom half, I wore a pair of just hiking trousers. These are Fjallraven Kebs. Really comfortable, love these trousers. I had a merino base layer here. This is an Alp kit one. Just comfortable. Obviously I can roll the sleeves up when it's warmer, roll them down when it gets a bit chilly, and a t-shirt on the top. This big bag here contains all of my camping gear, you know, my sleep gear, my clothing, my kitchen gear, pretty much everything was in this bag here. I think it's 110 litres, might be 115 litres, and it's a boundary dry bag from SealLine. Tough as boots. They can withstand being dragged in and out of the canoe and dragged across rocks and bumped off trees on the portage trail. You know, they really are tough. It has a decent carrying system, decent straps, and a padded bit here. You know, a simple sort of waistband and a sternum strap, and that was plenty comfortable enough for those long portages. Some of them were sort of 1 kilometre long. In the top of that bag I had stuff that I might want to get to easily, so I didn't have to dig for it. It was just there. Open the bag up, it's there at the top. So I have a small tarp here. It's not a full-size tarp that you can sleep under, but it's big enough to shelter under for like a lunch stop. You know, we didn't really know what the weather was going to be like while we were over there. As it turned out, we were really lucky with the weather, but you know, had it been raining, a small tarp for lunch breaks, lunch stops would have been super useful. This bag here has got my waterproofs in, so I've got a rain shell and a pair of rain, you know, waterproof trousers. So I've got a thin membrane waterproof jacket here from Rab, and I've got a thin pair of waterproof trousers from Montaigne with full length side zips, so I can get them on and off over my wetsuit boots easily. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the first aid kit because I did a video recently on this first aid kit, so pretty much all the stuff that's in here is in that video, but I did add a few things for this trip because I was a bit concerned about us being in such a remote area, you know, a long way from help. So I added a pair of surgical shears, just for being able to cut away clothing, and then in my cuts department I've got some additional bits and pieces. So I've got some steri strips that I put in. These are just for, you know, closing up smaller wounds. They're just yeah, an easy way of closing up and stopping bleeding. And I've got some of these suture kits. They're like well, they kind of replace the need for having to sew up a wound. They've got 2 adhesive pads on them. You stick them either side of the wound, and then there are these kind of plastic zip tie type affairs which you pull up and they just close it up. They pull those 2 adhesive bits together and close up the wound, just like sewing it upward. So I fancied the idea of using that a little more than actually using a needle and thread. That terrified me slightly. But having said that, I did also put in a proper suture kit as well. Also, readily at hand, I had my water filter. This is a 3 litre Katadyn B-free filter bag. So it's a filter and water bag as well. And it's just got a screw-off filter which goes on the top, and that has the mouthpiece on it as well. Annoyingly, the cap which goes over the top here broke off, and I lost that on the trip. I think it's a little bit of a well, a cheap cap really, you know, for what the filter is. I thought they might have had something a bit more robust than that. This was my main water bottle on the trip as well. In hindsight, I wish I'd taken a proper water bottle that I could have filled up from this in the morning, because although the flow rate is pretty good on this, it's not quite enough to quench your thirst when you're really gasping thirsty. You know, I was there squeezing it for all I was worth, trying to get a faster rate out of it when I was gasping thirsty at the end of those portages, you know. And then next out, I've got my kitchen kit. I've got my plate, just a thin titanium plate, and a small one of those Kapilka plates. I've got my knife. I took my Rob Evans bush tool with me on this trip, and it was perfect. Did everything I needed it to do. I've got my honey stove here. You'll have seen me use this on countless videos. It's a slot together twig stove. I also used it as a windbreak for my Trangia burner. You know, the burner just sits inside, cuts the wind off, and that makes a good little stove that way. So quite a versatile stove, ideal on this trip. Fuel, we had 2 litres of fuel with us, of methylated spirits alcohol for the stove. This is just my bottle from home, but Peter had supplied those for us, and he got the fuel ahead of time. We almost used all of that fuel as well. We had hardly any of it left by the end. I was using it for coffee in the morning, and we were using it for lunch breaks and things like that. This is my fire kit. I took some tinders and things with me, so I had some wood wool bundles, and I had some of those kind of fire plug things that you pull apart. Not really a big fan of these actually. I don't think they're that great. I'd much rather use wood wool. I've got some lifeboat matches in there, a ferro rod, and I did have a lighter in here as well, but I've since taken it out. I've got my sit mat. This thing was a lovely bit of luxury. This placed on my chair, it was just super comfy and insulating and very nice to sit on. That was made for me by Rose at Backpacking Light. She wove this on her peg loom out of pure wool. Very, very nice. I've got my gloves. Now, I bought these gloves some time ago, and I have been using them, but I'm actually not very impressed with them. These are made by Hestia and they cost quite a lot of money, but the first time I used them, the stitching came undone when I used them by the fire. I don't know whether that's because the stitching isn't, you know, fireproof. Maybe it's some sort of nylon thread used in them, I don't know. But the stitching came undone on 2 fingers, first use. So I'm completely unimpressed with them. I would advise anybody thinking about buying these to reconsider. Hestia do some other gloves which, you know, might be a bit more suitable, but they're a lot of money and yeah, not fit for purpose. This is my kitchen roll. You'll have seen this on many a video. It's got a spreader bar so that you can hang it up, and in here I had a coffee spoon. I've got a little Opinel knife in the end there for chopping veg. I've got some bellows, tongs, a peeler. That's actually the bar for spreading it to hang it up, and I've got a couple of spoons. My favourite eating spoon. It's a nice carved one made by John Sloyd in Sweden, and a long handle one for getting into those dehydrated meals as we had to towards the end of the trip. And I've got my spatula at the end. So that is my utensil roll, and then my cooking pot. The pot itself is a large British Army mess kit, and in hindsight I wish I hadn't taken it. My thinking was that it's big enough for 2 of us to cook big meals for 2 people. And I thought, well, maybe we could use it for a bit of baking, which we just didn't have a chance to do. In hindsight, I should have taken a frying pan and maybe a 14cm zebra billy pot. I've got my cozy in here. That's for keeping dehydrated meals warm while they rehydrate. It can take up to sort of 10 minutes sometimes for some of those meals. And it's just made from some of that insulated bubble wrap. I've got my Trangia burner in here. Like I mentioned earlier, we use this for the first few days for cooking and for lunch stops and for coffee and stuff in the morning. It just lives in that little David Friars pouch there. I use quite a lot of his pouches, and especially on this trip, just for organising my gear, keeping things together, you know, keeping messy things separate from clean things, all the rest of it, and they're all, you know, really well made to withstand the rigours of a canoe trip. I've took 2 pots with me, or cups. I've got a larger 750 pot here, which I used for boiling water and things for dehydrated meals. It's titanium, so it doesn't weigh hardly anything. And I've got my smaller one, which is my coffee pot. Again, titanium, weighs next to nothing. And they nest inside one another there to save on space. And obviously you can put stuff inside the small one as well. I've got my coffee pot here. I get a lot of questions about this. I really like good coffee. You know, that whole ritual of making coffee in the morning, love it. And you know, a good strong cup of espresso strength coffee, but big, is what I need in the mornings to get me going. Yeah, it's a big important part of my day. This coffee pot is a vintage Hungarian coffee maker. I found this on eBay. It's old, it was filthy when I bought it. I spent quite a lot of time you know, cleaning it and getting it so that it was usable, replacing the seals and everything. But that's what it is. It's not something you can just go and buy from the shops. This is old. This is probably from the 1950s. But yeah, really good. It does take a bit of time to heat up, just because it's thick. It's really thick aluminium, and it takes a while for that heat to get through and boil the water inside and make the steam so that it actually works. And obviously there's no separate vessel for the coffee to collect in. You just put your cup underneath the spout there and it just comes straight out. Yeah, really good bit of kit, love it. And then finally, in this canister here, I've got my coffee. I kept it in the canister just to keep the air and, more importantly, the water out. This coffee's by Dell's Outside, and it's absolutely delicious. And I used the whole pack of coffee on this trip to Sweden and Norway. I do like my coffee strong, and you know, that coffee maker of mine takes quite a bit of coffee. But yeah, absolutely spot on to get me going in the morning, wake me up, and yeah, get me ready for a day's paddling. These I carried in the middle of the dry bag because I didn't need to get to them during the day so much. They were more kind of things for the evening. So I had my warm fleece, I had clothing, and in this bag here, this is my pillow sack. It's kind of reversible. I just had loose bits and pieces that I didn't want to get lost in the bottom of my dry bag. My pillow sack is reversible, so it's nylon on the outside, so when I'm storing stuff in there I just keep it that way round, and then at night I can flip it the other way round. I can put my fleece and stuff in there, and it makes a nice soft pillow, sort of fleecy on the inside. So in here I kept a pack towel, just for drying off myself obviously, drying off my tarp in the morning if it was damp, drying dishes, things like that. I've got a bag here with lighting, so I have my head torch in there, and a small pull-out lantern, which I clipped inside my hammock for lighting. That's a Yuko one of their old Yuko battery-powered lamps. I have my personal sort of hygiene kit, so there's a whole load of stuff in here. I've got deodorant. I've got some sunscreen, some SPF 30 sunscreen, which I didn't use. I've got a mosquito head net, which I didn't use. Didn't really need it. The repellent did its job. This is a repellent I was using. This is a Swedish Migga insect repellent. This stuff is excellent. Works really well for those Scandinavian biting insects, even the big ones that you get in Sweden. I've got toothpaste and a fold-out toothbrush. I've got some more insect repellent here. This is the Nordic summer stuff. It smells like a bonfire, but works really well. I actually didn't end up using it while we were away. It was more as a backup, really. The Migga did the job. I've got my kind of toilet kit. So that has got toilet tissues, just handy tissues, and a little trowel for digging a cat hole. This is my repair and maintenance kit. You know, it might not be as important as your first aid kit, but when you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you're relying on your gear, having a means to repair it as you go along is really important. So I had several items in here, including these repair beads here. These are like a nylon polymer repair granule, and you melt them in hot water and you can mold them and repair plastic items, or you know, whatever really, anything that might be broken. I use them to repair my reading glasses, and the repair is so good that I'm still wearing them now. With that repair, it's lasted. This is the warm jacket that I took with me. It's a thick pile fleece from Hagloffs. Really nice and snuggly, really thick, really warm. And this is what I used to put on in the evening when it got chilly, or during the day if I needed to warm up. It's got a full length front zip and a hood. I really like to have a hood just to keep that chill off the back of my neck, and this was just a job of keeping me warm. And then these two pouches had more clothing in. These are more of those David Friars box pouches. This one has got a woolen jumper, not as thick as the fleece, but just nice to put on when it's not quite cold enough to put my my thick fleece on. And it's wool, but it's got a kind of terry knit on the inside, so it traps more warmth. It's made by Woolpower, Swedish company, really nice and warm. And I've got a buff, a woolen merino wool buff, so I can put that over my head, keep my neck warm. I've got some thinner Woolpower wrist warmers. Again, they've got that terry toweling kind of knit on the inside to trap more warmth. And I've got my good old buffalo mittens. These are Pertex on the outside and fibre pile on the inside, and I use these in the canoe while I'm paddling to keep my hands nice and warm. This box pouch here has got spare clothing in, so I've got spare socks. I took 2 pairs of spare underwear. I've got spare t-shirts, a couple of spare t-shirts, so that I could rotate the t-shirts I was wearing during the day. I've got a spare pair of trousers, hiking trousers, Fjallraven Keb Trousers, these ones are, just so that I had dry trousers to put on in the evening if I got wet, as I often did. And a pair of shorts, again, not used on this trip, but you know, that's just down to weather and temperature and all the rest of it. So that was the clothing I took with me. I've got my folding saw here, which was the saw I took with me to cut up firewood. You'll have seen this saw in use on many a video. And then I use the pouch to store the poles for my tarp. These are just like spreader bars, spreader poles, which just hold the tarp up a little bit, give you a bit more space underneath it. I've got my my fishing rod, which I'm really glad I took. It was good fun to have a go. It's just, you know, I'm not a fisherman. I don't really know what I'm doing, to be honest. And I didn't have very much time to devote to really trying. You know, I had the odd sort of like 10 minutes here, the odd 20 minutes there, and that was it. I did cast it out while I was paddling along in the hope I might be able to catch something by just trawling a spinner, you know, behind the canoe as I went, but again, nothing. You know, if I was going to do this trip again, I would like to have a bit more time, you know, maybe a couple of free days not paddling, where we could have done a bit more in camp and maybe even explored a little bit by foot, off away from the, you know, the lakes and the water. Would have been quite nice, but it would have been really cool to have maybe caught a fish. And I've got a chair. This isn't actually the chair I took with me. This is my one. We were lent camp chairs similar to this, which we used while we were over there. Yeah, I mean, they were fantastic. So I've got a sleeping bag here. This is a Mountain Hardware Lamina 35, which is good down to just above freezing. Comfortable sleeping bag, kept me plenty warm enough. I decided well ahead of time that I was going to take a hammock with me on this trip and not sleep on the ground. You know, we're in Scandinavia. There's no shortage of trees, although we were quite close to the limit of vegetation. We were quite high up. Yeah, I decided on a hammock. I knew it was going to be quite rocky where we were, and was unsure about how many flat spots we'd be able to find to pitch tents or to sleep in bivvies or whatever. I just fancied the idea of a hammock. I sleep well in a hammock anyway. I was really happy with the one I took. It's a Norwegian Amok Hammocks, one of those lay flat ones. Really comfortable, so it's as good as laying on the ground. It has an inflatable mat that goes inside it, so if I couldn't find two trees together, I could still sleep on the ground because I had a mattress, which is you know, a good a good warm mattress, insulated. I decided to take a war bonnet tarp with me. This is the Superfly tarp, and my thinking was that it's a little bit bigger and it would have given me more cover if I did end up having to sleep on the ground, and it's got those spreader bars to lift it up a bit. But in hindsight, and having compared it to Andy's, he took the proper Amok tarp with him. There's not a huge amount of difference in size, and I think the Amok tarp is better. This is the other dry bag I took with me. This is the 35 litre SealLine boundary pack. It's got the same back system as the bigger one. Same shoulder strap, sternum strap, waist strap, and roll top closure on the top to keep everything dry inside. I used this as my cabin bag when I flew over to Norway, and I kept all my camera gear in here. So I had a Pelican case in there, you know, one of those hard plastic cases with all my camera gear in. And then while we were there, this contained, various bits of kit really, but more stuff that we borrowed. So we had a small Pelican case that we borrowed off Peter, not this one, but a similar size, and that was full of kind of charging bits and pieces. So there were big power banks in there, leads and batteries and various things that were in that Pelican case. We also had a big solar panel, which we could use for recharging those power banks, although we didn't end up using them. The juice in those power banks was enough. We had a lot of stuff to charge, and there was two of us charging camera batteries, phone batteries, drone batteries, batteries for the microphones and all the rest of it. There's, you know, a lot of gear when you're filming. We also had a big grill which we borrowed. It was, you know, quite a large item, and that just slipped down the back there with the solar panel. We carried our food in 30 litre barrels like this one here. This one's actually mine from home. We borrowed a couple off Peter, and the LK35 frames to carry them on. We also had some lanterns. We had a lantern each. Probably could have done without them, to be honest, but they were quite nice, especially on the Swedish side before we could have fires. You know, just having a little flickering flame from the lantern actually made quite a big difference. They were sort of nice for morale, really. These barrels also work well as camp furniture, as well as for transporting food in. So you can sit on them, you know, put a sit mat on the top there. They're quite comfortable as a table or as a work surface for chopping veg or whatever on. To keep our fresh food fresh for the first couple of days, and to keep our beer cold, we use this cool bag here. You know, you can buy cool bags designed to keep your packed lunch cool, or a picnic or whatever, and they'll keep things cool for sort of 12 hours with a couple of ice packs, weren't they? This thing is more like a cold box. We had frozen bacon, so that was kind of working as the ice pack, and we had steaks, we had various vegetables and things which we wanted to keep cool, and obviously the beer. And then finally, I've got my camera case. This is one of those hard plastic Pelican style waterproof cases, so if it ends up in the water, my camera gear is safe. And I've just put bungees on the top so I can hold a map case on the top with all the maps that we had with us for the whole trip in Sweden and through into Norway. My sunglasses sitting on the top there. And everything else we used on the trip, we borrowed once we were over there. So the canoes themselves, which were those amazing alley folding canoes from Bergen's, like a skin-on frame, basically, aluminium frame. You clip it all together, and as you clip it together, it all tightens up, and it tightens this PVC skin on the outside. The boats are fantastic. They're rigid. They're very manoeuvrable. They handled well on the lake, despite no keel or anything. You know, they tracked well. On the river, they were manoeuvrable and nimble. You know, you could get yourself around and positioned on the river well. The only downside to them is that if you do hit a rock, they tend to stop you dead. You know, a rigid canoe would just probably glance over and go over most of those rocks, but if you hit a rock in one of those canoes, it's just a lot more friction, and they tend to just stop. And I think that's really the reason why Andy ended up going in. He wasn't expecting it. He thought he was home free. It was almost down that rapid. He'd done so well, and then he hit that rock at the end, and it just it stopped him dead, and he was in. So that is really the only downside. But aside from that, they're highly portable. You can fold them up and put them away in a bag and carry them on your back. So if you haven't got a means to carry a canoe or even store a canoe, if you live in an apartment or something, it might be a good option. It's a full-size canoe in a bag that handles really well. They're light, they're easy to carry, and they're very strong. Considering what we put them through, we were dragging them around, dragging them in and out of the river, portaging, and squeezing between trees, rubbing them against rough trees. Obviously, going down the white water, down the rapids, over rocks, lining them down. They were just getting bumped and abused the whole way down that river, and they stood up to it. There were no issues, no rips, no punctures. They looked a little bit scraped in places when we got to the bottom, understandably, but any canoe would. We had buoyancy aids, which we borrowed as well. So obviously we didn't need to take them over again. They're kind of like bulky items, so we borrowed those. The barrels I mentioned about, and the lanterns we borrowed. We didn't take the lanterns with us, the paraffin lanterns. And the Garmin GPS tracker, the InReach tracker. That thing was, thankfully not needed from an emergency point of view, but it was really good to be in touch. There was no mobile phone signal out there at all, or it was very sketchy. Now and again you might get one bar and then it'd just be gone. Getting help out there, it would be impossible if you didn't have something like that, really. You'd have to walk, you'd have to hike out. We were also able to obviously use it as a tracker, so we were, our progress was being monitored. I was able to give that tracker information to family, and they could see how we were getting on, and also Peter was keeping an eye, making sure we weren't, getting lost or anything. The trip was absolutely fantastic. It was tough going. It was definitely tough going, especially that second half. But I enjoyed it so much. I love a challenge like that. The harder, the better for me. It pushes me. It tests my abilities, and I just thrive on that sort of thing. Yes, it was hard work, and yes, it was exhausting. And yes, my feet hurt and all the rest of it, but that's part of it. If it all went smoothly, it wouldn't be so memorable. And I think you've got to have these challenges. You've got to push yourself. You've got to see what you're capable of and what you're able to do. And it was a challenge for both of us, for absolute sure. We both pulled together. We both worked to our strengths, and we got down that river system, and we got to the end, and we made it to that boat. and that was a big part of the challenge. We had a time constraint, and we had to get there by a certain time, and we got there the morning that boat arrived. So we did it despite the hardships. We had the wrong footwear. Andy as well as me. Andy's footwear were more like slippers than anything else, and then he lost one. So he was like one slipper man for the last day. The terrain over there, the environment is absolutely stunning. The Swedish side was very different to the Norwegian side. In Sweden it was the lakes. It was calmer. It was a bit easier going. It was tranquil. It had a serene beauty to it with the lakes, and especially in the evening when that wind dropped and the lakes were just still, and you could see the reflections of the trees. It was just gorgeous. Then obviously into the Norwegian side it became even more rugged, even rockier. The portages were tougher, but it was just beautiful, absolutely stunning. And we were so lucky with the weather, so lucky. We had some fantastic weather, beautiful sunshine for the most part. It was a bit cloudier towards the end, but even still, even in overcast conditions, the place is still absolutely stunningly beautiful, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. It would definitely have been easier on pack rafts. I would like to do a trip like that where I haven't got to take all the gear we took. Just go really lightweight, bare bones, minimal gear, fish and try and catch fish. So I need to learn to fish because obviously you can save weight because you're not having to carry so much food and you've got fresh food. Just dehydrated meals for the rest of it, and just cut out a lot of the other gear. Yeah, do it all in one rucksack, pack raft, attach the pack raft to the rucksack, and it's just one carry, isn't it, for each portage. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. And I have actually since bought a pack raft. My mate Martin has been trying to steer me towards pack rafting for some time. We went on a trip a couple of years ago. You may have seen that video, and I ended up just being wet the whole time. But I've been out in my new pack raft, and it's much better. I'm not going to give up canoeing, don't worry. A canoe will always be my #1 mode of transport on water. But a pack raft now and again could be fun, especially if you can cut out a load of weight when you've got walk more than you've got to paddle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.